Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith, and welcome to an interesting tier list. This is a tier list of my tier lists. So, I've done a series of 15-minute tier lists on the channel, where I went through every Fire Emblem game, splitting up for games with multiple generations, multiple books, multiple side stories, or multiple games. Except I did all three houses in one list. And I did a traditional style tier list. This is a little bit different, in which I'm trying to make a tier list of those tier lists based upon how I felt I did, my experience with the game, and the feedback that I got around them. I've gotten a lot more feedback around the more popular games, surprise surprise, Awakening, all of Fates. Fire Emblem 6, I think, got the most interesting feedback, so people love to discuss Fire Emblem 6, apparently. And I didn't get very much feedback on some of the other ones. Fire Emblem 1, I think I got one comment. Fire Emblem 2, same deal. Nobody commented on my Fire Emblem 4 tier list, so that's a thing. I didn't have anything to go by there. Anyway, let's get this started. Let's rank what I feel these tier lists should be. First of all, let's also try and understand what these images are, because when I imported them into the tier list maker, they all got squished. So first of all, this is Fire Emblem 1. I think this is an A tier list. Primarily because, first of all, no one can complain about it because no one's played the game. No one has okay. People have played it, especially since it came out in 2020. Again, for like 3 months. People have played the game, at least. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have played the game who like to talk about or comment about it, whatever. So, it's a fun game, it's good. I think I did a pretty good job explaining all the units in ways that, in a very swift manner, in ways that didn't quite add up in some ways. Is it perfect? Probably not, but I think it's an A tier list. Gaiden, I think, is an S tier list. No one complained about it, no one can complain about it. No one can prove me wrong. I think one person said that Luca should have been S tier instead of A tier, but hey, S tier is reserved for those units that just break the game wide open. In this tier list, A tier units are not anything to be upset by. If you're A tier, you are a fantastic unit. Fire Emblem 3, I split into Book 1 and Book 2. Do I remember which one is what? Well, this one has, I think, Milicia in it, so yeah. Yes, this makes sense. Yeah, so Fire Emblem 3, I mean, why am I even bothering too much? I think both Fire Emblem 3 tier lists are A tier. I played through the game at least once. I have a decent grasp of all the subsystems. Is it perfect? No. Could there be some feedback? Probably, but no one really provided much feedback. They just said, hey, Yumina is S tier because Rescue is her personal staff. And you know what? That's fair feedback. I agree with it. Maybe not agree with S tier, but definitely at least, one tier higher, at least B tier, if not A tier. Because Rescue is very important in that game. Fire Emblem 4, I split into 2 tier lists. I will definitely say I'm far more confident in my Fire Emblem Gen 1 tier list than my Gen 2 tier list. Gen 1... am I really that unconfident in my Gen 2 tier list? Kind of. Gen 1, I'm still not perfectly sound on. I think it's still a little shaky. I just don't really know how to tier for Fire Emblem 4, to be honest. Because what context do you tier in? The game is so strange. The game has no real limits or requirements on you, unless you're going for a ranked run, in which case all the units have to be used to their optimal capacity, and so you have to... I talked about it in the video. Thieves are like S tier, and staff users are hard to rank because they'll just rank themselves. They'll level themselves up using staves, and so they don't necessarily contribute, but at the same time, they're not a detriment because they don't force you to play awkwardly. It's so weird to rank for a ranked run, to tier for a ranked run. But then the Gen 2 rank is just D tier because how do you rank units when they could have any number, any combination of skills and stats, and all the replacements, which I didn't use ever. I've only gone through the game once. That's another reason why I'm less confident in this tier list. Still didn't really get much feedback on it. Fire Emblem, Thracia. Oh, where's Thracia's tier list? That no. No, Thracia has more bold sprite work. It's all the GBA. Oh yeah, Thracia also has a million billion characters. That's what it is. Yeah, Thracia, I think it was a B list, tier list. I did the best that I could. I played through it once. I've watched a lot of content on it, but it's still kind of a mystery, and it's kind of up in the air with how you want to tier stuff, because, again, Thracia is the most random game in the series. Any unit could turn out to be amazing or terrible, and so a unit's... it's also the game where a unit's raw combat stats matter the least, but also the most. It's odd. It's very odd. It's a very odd game to tier. I think I did a decent job, but, I mean, still, it's B tier. I didn't get a whole lot of comments explaining why I was wrong. A game that I got a surprising number of comments on, both about how I was right and how I was wrong, which means it's solid B tier, is Fire Emblem 6. Apparently, Fire Emblem 6 is the game to discuss what units you think are good or bad, because every unit has arguments to be made about it. Like, I'm gonna go on the record, I think Fire Emblem 6 is probably one of the best, if not the best, balanced Fire Emblem games across the series in terms of its units, sheerly because of how terrible most of the units are. And yes, there are a handful of standout units, but when you have 4 clear S tiers, and everyone else is, like, in the mix, that's not bad. That means everyone's viable. Because in that game is designed so that you cannot effectively solo or duo tank unless you really plan it out well. The sheer numbers of enemies, the sheer size of the maps, you need a large number of units for those. And the game does it really well. I think it's a really well-balanced game. Anyway, but this is not the tier list for what game balance is. Maybe I can talk about that later. But I think I did a decent job, but I think there's plenty of arguments to be made up or down. And that's why I think it's a B tier tier list. Fire Emblem 7. I'd also put in B tier. I got a decent amount of comments on this one as well. Nothing that really pointed out anything that was super wrong about it, just a couple of weird picks, I guess. I was a little all over the map with some of my placement. I've played this several times, but I've played it several times in very weird contexts, like challenge runs, zero bases mod, and so naturally my view of units are a little skewed. I still think this is a reasonable tier list, but I can see that there's a lot of potential arguments to be made up or down it. Fire Emblem 8. I've played this game at least 12 times by now. I know what I'm talking about. Fire Emblem 8, I made an S tier tier list, and it pained me so greatly to put some of my favorite units to use down in like E or F tier. I'm sorry, Ewan. I'm sorry, Namie. Had to be done. Did I overrate Ross? Maybe. Is that probably my only real, iffy point? Would I put Ross in like B tier instead of A tier? Maybe. That said, I've never had a bad Ross. Ross has never been hard to level, and Ross has always become insanely good for me, but that also I recognize is potentially subjective as well. Anyway, I think I made a great tier list. Y'all can fight me if you want. Fire Emblem 9. Where did I put this? Fire Emblem 9. I think I did okay. Again, didn't necessarily get too many comments on this. I got far more comments on DS games than 3DS games, than anything else. And I got far more comments on GBA than anything else beyond that. So that's what it is. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Only thing that I'm really iffy about is the Lagoose unit placements because I haven't necessarily used them. But other than that, I've tried to use every unit at least once. I think I tiered it decently, and I haven't gotten any comments saying otherwise. For Path of Radiant, sorry. Radiant Dawn is another story. Radiant Dawn is a weird game. I can't even read some of these tier lists. I think it's this one. Yes. Radiant Dawn, I think I only did a B tier job, because I think I clearly demonstrated why certain units... I mean, obviously Har is top tier. Jill is in my mind still like a B tier unit, but I can see why people place her as S tier because of so much investment, and I folded to popular demand and put her up in S tier because if you invest in her, she is far better use of that investment than anyone else. I still don't necessarily like putting her up there. Every other unit, like there are so many units that I still haven't used, and I've run through this game at least 3 or 4 times. It's a long game. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put it in B tier and be done with it. Fire Emblem 11. No, which one? I'm pretty sure it's this one because it's not the one with a million units. I'm gonna put it in C tier. I honestly don't have a great judge of what units are good, what units are bad. I know which units are broken because of some weird quirks they have. Wolf, Sedgear, and the Ballisticians. And I guess Jagan. Jagan and Wendell, but aside from that, I don't really know too much about a lot of how these units work, what makes them unique, what makes them good, what makes them bad. Because Fire Emblem 11 went out of its way to say none of your units are unique as much as possible, and to really say, hey, we are wanting to make sure that these units are all... You can use them however you want, you can reclass them, you can, whatever, freely. And I find that makes it really hard to effectively tier the game. Fire Emblem 12, I'm gonna just straight up admit, it's an F tier list. I don't know the game well. I played it once on Maniac mode and I haven't gone back to it. It's a puzzle game. That means every unit is not like a regular unit. Every unit is so much more of a puzzle piece. Does this unit fit the situation? Does this unit have something unique that it can do or not? I think that there's... Hopefully you're not catching that too much. I think that there's some reasons to tier it as you will, but it's eh. I didn't do a good job, I will say. Do not follow this tier list seriously. It was a rush job, and I just knew I needed to make one because I was going to go through all the Fire Emblem games, and I had to throw one out anyway. Awakening. I think it's like... I debate what to put it. I think I'm going to put it in a C tier list, because I don't think I was super wrong about any units, but I don't think I was really happy about it. Like, Awakening is a weird game because the units are so stratified, as in there are a handful of clear top tiers, there are a handful of clear bottom tiers, there's all the units that don't matter because you don't get them during the campaign anyway, so I just threw them in doesn't exist tier. And then everyone else is just kind of in the middle of, like, if you use them and invest into them, you can make them good. If you don't, they're bad. And they all have something unique about them, but who really cares? And I think that it manages to have a similar problem as Fire Emblem 6, but whereas Fire Emblem 6, it's a strength for it, I think Fire Emblem Awakening makes it a problem, because in Awakening it's a problem because all the units feel samey, all of them feel interchangeable, all of them feel, it's kind of like a Fire Emblem 11 problem, Shadow Dragon problem, whereas Fire Emblem 6, all the units are meh, but they all feel unique, they all feel different, they all feel like, oh, this provides me some unique placement, so it becomes, how do you want to play? Anyway, I think Awakening is hard to tier. I don't have enough experience with it. I've played it on hard once, I've played it on Lunatic 1.5 times, because I got halfway through, quit, restarted. I don't like Awakening, that's my bottom line. I don't think it's a bad game, I just don't think it's the game for me, personally. Fire Emblem 14... So I split into 3, because it's 3 entirely different games. Which I didn't do for 3 houses, because I didn't want to make 4 different tier lists. Now, which one's what? Let me lean in here. The one with all the units is obviously Revelations, and that's a crapshoot to actually rank. I played it once on hard because I just finished cheesing my way out of the final chapter of Conquest on Lunatic, and I was just like, I don't want to play Lunatic ever again, so I played Revelations on hard, and it bored me to death. I guess it was interesting the first time I played it, but it was interesting in the way of, like, this is just such a wacky ride, where's it gonna go next? Tried to play it on Lunatic later, got to, like, Chapter 10, and just, like, actually got so bored I just stopped playing, and didn't care anymore. I think I did a really poor job of tiering units. I think that units are almost impossible to tier in Revelations because they are all just thrown in randomly, and it's impossible to remember when each unit joins anyway because they all join at such random times. That's my Revelations thoughts. Now, which one is Birthright? Well, this one's Conquest. I think I did a decent job at tiering Conquest. Having so much experience on Lunatic Conquest, I've played through that twice. Once where I cheesed through the last couple chapters, and once where I didn't. And I technically didn't beat it because I still am stuck on the final chapter because I played it like a dozen times and I just like gave up. I was just like, screw this, I don't want to do it anymore. But even so, I feel like playing it on a harder difficulty gives me more insight into how I want to. Sorry about the coughing. Into how I want to tier the units and what the units are actually good at, what they give, what they offer. Yeah, and so I think that's a C-list tier list. I don't think it's good by any means. I don't think it's a great tier list, but I think it's at least more reasonable than my other Fates tier lists. Speaking of which, Birthright is a D-tier tier list. It's fine. I completely forgot that Ryoma joins like 5 chapters earlier than I thought he did, and so I mistiered him, and that's literally the only thing any comments talked about. They just wouldn't shut up about him being S tier instead of A tier, so fine, you win. It's a D tier tier list. Moving on. Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. I will say it's an A tier tier list. What's keeping me from S tier, even though it's my favorite game, is one of my favorite games. Hard to compete with Gaiden and Sacred Stones. Huh, funny. I have a thing for split routes. Split routes that come together. Who knew? I think it's fine, but I think the villager tiering throws me off, and some of the availability issues, some of the spell list issues, you can definitely argue up or down on that. I think it's an A tier tier list. I think I did a pretty good job, but I don't think it's perfect. And Three Houses. Speaking of not perfect, Three Houses is a C tier tier list, I would say. I think I did a decent job at giving each unit's general strengths and weaknesses without going into specific builds. I think I did allow myself to delve into some specific build issues, particularly with Ash. I think I'm still a little shaky with where I want to place some of these units. And so it's like a C tier tier list. I think it did a pretty good job. I might move it up to B, but I think I'm going to leave it in C because I'm just not super confident in it. I played every route once and that's it. But yeah, that is how I would rank my tier lists into this tier list. Oh, and if you wanted to ask where my Advance Wars Days of Ruin tier list goes, it's straight in the garbage below F tier. I did not think about... I allowed myself to get twisted by the internet's thoughts on how to rank Tabitha and completely ignored the fact that she's actually completely insanely dominant because she's a map pool CO, and if the map pool encourages direct conflict, which the vast majority of Advance Wars maps that are Advance Wars Days of Ruin maps that I played do, she owns because there's no way to escape, there's no way to run around, there's no way to counterattack. Do I think she's the best CO in the game? No. But I mean, no one stands up to Calder. But I think that she's definitely not a C tier TO. She's at least B, if not low A. If not high A, let's be real. But again, map dependent. But that's a different tier list. That's not one of these. And then my Fire Emblem Skills tier list I didn't include here either. So, well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was interesting. I hope that it was entertaining. yeah, let me know what you think about my tier lists, and if you have any suggestions for what other tier lists I could make, leave them in the comments down below. Please subscribe to the channel. I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. It has been a very long road here, and it's going to be a very long road in the future, but I'm going to be uploading more frequently. I'm going to be experimenting with some different types of content, and I'm going to be trying some other things to hopefully get on and get up those numbers and feel confident in keeping this alive and keeping it around for much longer. Thank you so much for all the support. Hope you have a wonderful day. This is Mythos signing out.